Shalom, I am Dr. Ann Davis with Bible Interact, and I've been having fun doing these travel to Israel programs. I have been to Israel many times actually, and when I go, I don't go with a group. I either travel by myself or with one or two colleagues, and the purpose is to visit biblical sites and to get immersed in those sites and also to take pictures so that I can bring them back and use them in my teaching. So in this one, I want to take you on a journey with Yeshua to the Gentiles, because most of Yeshua's ministry was to the Jews, but he also had occasional interactions with pagan non-Jews who are known as Gentiles. We will travel with him to the Roman Decapolis cities, to Phoenicia on the coast north of Israel, and to Samaria in the northern hill country of Israel. So we read in Matthew, these 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them, do not go in the way of the Gentiles. Now the way of the Gentiles is the Decapolis cities right here. It's kind of in yellow. They're for the most part on the east side of the Jordan River, a little bit on the west side. If some of you have visited Bet Sha'an, that was a Decapolis city, and that's on the west side of the Jordan River. And do not enter any city of the Samaritans. Now here's Samaria in the northern hill country. I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now there's another site we're going to visit, and that's up here in Phoenicia, which the Phoenicians were north of Israel. So that's where we're going to be visiting today. So we'll start in Phoenicia. There were two main ports in Phoenicia, Tyre and Sidon. We'll go to Tyre. And Jesus withdrew into the district of Tyre and Sidon. So Tyre was a little farther south, Sidon was a little farther north. They were on the coast. They were port cities. Here's a picture, aerial picture of Tyre today. In the ancient time, there was no land. It wasn't a peninsula. It was an island with water in the neck. Where the neck is, that would have been water. But what's important here is that there are two harbors on Tyre. And Tyre was a very busy maritime port from which the Phoenicians would sail all over the Mediterranean. And a Canaanite woman from that region, they were all Canaanites, they were all pagan Canaanites who lived in Phoenicia, came out and began to cry out, saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." And I want you to get a picture. This is an archaeological site in Tyre today. It was a Roman city in the time of Yeshua. Those pillars on the side would have contained shops, and the archway would have been the entrance into the city. I just want you to imagine Yeshua with his disciples, and maybe they're on this road. And the woman comes up to him and talks to him, "Have mercy on me. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." Phoenicia was the land all along the coast in what is today Lebanon. And you see all the cities, major cities, are on the coast. They were port cities. And the Phoenicians were a maritime people. They sailed all over the Mediterranean. This is a drawing of one of the Phoenician ships. It had both oars and a sail. And sometimes they used 2 or even 3 sails. And they had the slaves were the ones who would row. And sometimes they had 2 levels of oars, one lower than the other. And one thing that they invented was the keel. And the keel would be a strip all along the bottom of the boat. And between the rudder and the keel, it would keep the boat going in a straight line and turning where they wanted it to turn. Another invention that they had, which was amazing, is they put pieces of wood together by interlocking. So there were no nails, no glue. They just all fitted together. My brother specialized in this as a carpenter. He would be involved in remodeling, reconstructing some of the really old buildings that were made like this without nails. And that's the way the Phoenicians did it. It was quite amazing, because if there's glue or nails, it can leak. But this was just very tight construction, and was amazing to keep it from leaking. Phoenicians settled colonies all around the Mediterranean. And in fact, there were some boot of Italy. It doesn't show on the map, but there were, and I visited an archaeological site on the southern tip of Italy. The purple are where they settled all their colonies. The most famous colony is Carthage, which is right here. It's on the very tip of land that comes out, forms a peninsula. And you probably remember the wars between the Romans and the Carthaginians, and Hannibal crossed the mountain with elephants. So that's Carthage, and those are the Phoenicians. They even got as far as Spain. Very famous for inventing the amphora. Dr. George Sparks will show you those archaeological artifacts of the amphora. They were taken on ship, and the way they were built, they could be tightly fitted together, and they typically carried liquid, primarily wine. But the smaller ones would have carried perfume, perhaps. But this was an invention of the Phoenicians, this amphora. And here's a picture of how they're being stored, tightly stored together, and then, of course, roped around to keep them from moving around as the ship would toss and turn. Now, I want to take a look at the Phoenician religion and culture, because Yeshua is going up into a pagan country. I mean, they're not Jews. They're pagan Canaanites. And we see, this is in Deuteronomy, talking about what the Israelites should not do. And they should not do what's being done up in Tyre and Sidon in the Phoenician area, because the Phoenicians were Canaanites, they were pagans. And the Israelites were commanded in Deuteronomy, there shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire. That, I mean, to me is just, it just makes my heart very heavy to think that they would take their firstborn son and burn him as a sacrifice to the gods. And yet that was something that was done. One who uses divination, one who practices witchcraft, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who casts a spell, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. These are all Canaanite practices. And this was the culture of the country of Phoenicia in which Yeshua is going. What I have here is a picture of, it's an artifact, it's been uncovered, a statue of Baal, who was their main god. Actually, he was the second in command among the Canaanites in Phoenicia. And the same God we see him in Israel. I mean, the people of Israel were still, kind of holding on to some of these pagan gods, and Baal, sometimes call him Baal, but in Hebrew Baal, was the head of all the gods. And he was the god of thunder and storms and power. And this was their second god. Their first god was called El. And of course in Israel, El is short for Elohim. So we're seeing things in Israel that are sort of have been affected by the pagan Canaanites around them. Now, let's take a look at Tyre in the Bible, because we read about Tyre in the Bible, the Phoenician city of Tyre. When King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, King Hiram of Tyre supplied cedar from the forest of Lebanon. Now, that's the way it's translated, but that's Phoenicia, what is today Lebanon. And this was Phoenicia. That was coming from Phoenicia. Jezebel, wife of King Ahab, was a Phoenician princess who promoted the worship of Baal in Israel. And I'm sure you've read about Jezebel. Great wealth of Tyre was from exporting a purple dye that was made from the murex shellfish. It took 12,000 of these little shells that were needed for enough dye to dye one purple robe. And it was very expensive, and so that purple became the symbol of royalty. And the kings would wear a purple robe, and that's how it was made from this shellfish that was harvested in Tyre. And then, of course, the Canaanite worship in Phoenicia included ritualized prostitution, sex worship, and infant sacrifice. So we can see that in the Bible. Now, let's take a look at Yeshua in Tyre. Again, this is a picture of archaeological remains in Lebanon, which was ancient Tyre. And we can picture Yeshua walking with his disciples trailing after him, because it said that Yeshua did not answer her a word. This was the woman that came to him asking for help. And his disciples came and implored him and saying, "Send her away because she keeps shouting at us." But he answered and said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Now, I think this is important because obviously Yeshua is going to Gentiles, but it's not very frequent. And when he does go to the Gentiles, he has compassion on them, heals them, and helps them. So his compassion is on everyone, not just those to whom God has sent him. They're on everyone. And I think as Christians today, we need to keep that in mind, is that our compassion needs to be on everyone, not just on Christian believers. But she came and began to bow down before him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed at once. So not only was he having compassion on those who were not Jews, they were not God's people, but his compassion led to his actually helping them and healing them. And again, I relate that to Christians today, that our compassion should be on all people. And if we can help those who are not Christians, maybe they're despised in the world, maybe they're a homosexual, but have compassion and try to help them regardless, because Yeshua did. Now, we're leaving Tyre and Phoenicia, and we're going to go over to the Decapolis cities, which were Roman cities built on the edge of the Roman Empire to protect the Roman Empire from marauders coming in from farther east. I'm going to take you to two sites. We're going to go to Gadara, which is, you see the Sea of Galilee, and it's going to, right on the coast of the Sea of Galilee is going to be a miracle. And then we're going to go, also going to take you to the archaeological site of Jerash, which is today in Jordan. And that was the major city of the Gadara, the Gadarenes, their province of the Roman Decapolis cities. And we read that when Yeshua came to the other side, so he's, the Jews live on the west side of the Sea of Galilee, and he crosses over in a boat to the other side, he'll be in the area of the Gentiles and of the Decapolis cities. And the Decapolis city in the province of one of these Decapolis cities was Gadara. So he came to the country of the Gadarenes. Two men who were demon-possessed met him as they were coming out of the tombs. And that's over on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. It's in the area of the Decapolis. Now there was a herd of many swine feeding at a distance from them. We don't know the exact site, but tradition has it being this site, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But you can see how the land slopes down, levels off a little bit, and then goes into the Sea of Galilee. Demons began to entreat him, saying, "If you are going to cast us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." And they came out and went into the swine, and the whole herd rushed down to the sea bank into the sea and perished in the waters. Now, the picture that I'm showing you here is the archaeological remains of a monastery that dates to about the 3rd century of the Common Era, because Christians thought this was the traditional site of that miracle, where Yeshua had made the demons go into the pigs, into the swine, into the pigs, and the pigs ran down into the water and drowned. We don't know whether that's the right site or not, but tourists go there, and it's kind of fun to imagine the story. Now I'm going to take you to Jerash. That would have been the main city of Gadara and one of the capital cities. And it's a wonderful archaeological site. It's in Jordan today. And my husband and I visited it on one of our trips. It's a Roman city, of course, Roman Decapolis city. And this is the Roman road. The roads are amazing. The stones are very flat and level, and the middle is elevated slightly, and the two sides drop down just a little bit, and then there are gutters on each side to carry off the rain so that there's no rain on the road. And then those pillars on the right, there would have been a roof over them, and there would have been shops in between the pillars, and this was characteristic of Roman cities. Again, my husband was having fun taking pictures because it was extraordinary. The remains there of Jerash is really quite something to see. And of course, there was the theater, the Roman theater, characteristic of the Romans, and that very well preserved theater in Jerash. Okay, now we're going to go to Samaria. And you see on the map Jerusalem in the southern part of the hill country. In the north is the Sea of Galilee, and Capernaum is the city right on the western northwestern side of the Sea of Galilee. And we read that Jesus left Judea. Now, Jerusalem is in Judea, so he's going from probably somewhere outside of Jerusalem. And he went away again into Galilee. Now, Capernaum is in Galilee. So there are two ways to go. The most common way is from Jerusalem to, to go down through the Wadi Kelt, cross the Jordan River at Jericho, and then over to the Roman road. Now, at the time of Yeshua, there was an excellent Roman road that was running north. That was running north from Damascus, and farther north actually, and going all the way down to Egypt. So it would connect up with that wonderful Roman road. And then as they went north, was a way they could cut off and come back across the Jordan River and over to Capernaum. So that was the main way to go from Jerusalem north to Galilee. Capernaum is in the Galilee. But Yeshua decided to go the way that very few Jews would go, and that was to pass through Samaria. So here's Samaria. It's in the north part of the hill country. And get there, there's no Roman road at the time of Yeshua. It was a dirt road at the time of Yeshua. And he went to Samaria, and there's where he's going to have some activity with Gentiles. And then after that, he would leave Samaria and go back up to Capernaum. So let's now go to the Samaritans are very interesting. The Samaritans were viewed as non-Jewish. Most were part Jews, half Jews, were treated as second-class citizens by the Jews due to their idolatry and intermarriage with foreigners. So they, the Jews in Israel didn't want to have anything to do with the Samaritans. They wouldn't travel through Samaria. They would rather take the Roman road anyway. It's a better way to go. But rarely would they go through the hill country through Samaria. Now, this is a picture. Let me show you here. There's Mount Gerizim on the left, Mount Ebal on the right. And the Samaritans they had a temple up on Mount Gerizim, and what you have down below is the modern Palestinian city, the Israelis call by the ancient Hebrew name of Shechem. The Romans called it Nablus, so the Palestinians insist on calling it Nablus. They will not call it by a Hebrew name. And but I've been a couple of times in this area, and the first time I was with a Canadian woman. She and I were studying Hebrew at an ulpan, and during the break in the middle there, I was invited by two Palestinian girls that I had gotten to know to come up to visit them and their family, and I was kind of nervous to go by myself, so I invited this Canadian woman to come with me. And we took a bus to Jerusalem, and then we walked over into East Jerusalem and found a taxi that could take us north to Shechem, which is where these two girls that I had met, where their families lived. And they arranged for a guide who spoke English, a very nice young gentleman. And we told them where we wanted to go. The two girls had to work during the day, and so we were free during the day, and the guide would take us where we wanted to go. And I wanted to go up to Mount Gerizim. And so we were in his car, and we drove up about 2/3 of the way, and then there was a fence or a pole, that would lift up to let cars go through. And he said, I can't go any farther because the Israelis control up on the top, and I can't go. Of course, he was a Palestinian. So the girl and I got out of the car, and we walked up to the top. And they were just beginning to do excavation work. They've done quite a bit since then. I'd love to go back. Anyway, let me keep going on the story. While there's a Samaritan village before you get to the gate, that's about halfway up Mount Gerizim. And this is the elder that was in charge of the Samaritans who lived there. This is today, the Samaritans today. And our guide spoke Arabic, Hebrew, and English. So this man, I think, was speaking Hebrew, and he was translating into English what he was saying. And they had a very ancient scroll dating back to about the 10th century that had been stolen. And the people who had stolen it were asking a huge amount of money for ransom, and they were trying to raise money. So he was telling us about the Samaritans, hoping that we would go back to the United States and Canada and raise the money that they needed, and which, of course, we couldn't do to get their scroll back. But it was interesting to have him tell us about the Samaritans. Another interesting thing is that these Samaritans on Mount Gerizim still practice the sacrificial lamb on Passover. And so follow the trench back, and that's where they sacrifice the lamb. And then the blood flows down through this trench, and they still do that sacrifice. It would be fun to go at that time to see it, which I've never done. So Yeshua came to a city of Samaria called Sychar. We don't know exactly where that was, but it was, in that area, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now, I'm going to take you to the burial site of Joseph. So he was very close to that site, and so were we. But first, going before the burial site of Joseph, we went to the ancient archaeological site of Shechem. And I've been there twice. The first time it was in really quite good condition. The second time it was a mess. I think the Palestinians, they just don't have any respect for these sites. They think of them as Israeli sites, and they come in and they really kind of trash it. But Shechem is a city. Abraham came there when he came into the land. That's where he came first. So it was fun. And on this trip, I was with Dr. George Sparks, and of course, he's the archaeologist, and he was just going wild on this site. It was really fun to be there. The most interesting thing was this had been reconstructed. The stones were there, but archaeologists had propped them back up again where they were, and it was where you made an offering right before coming into the door of the city, and was the place for the offering. Now let's go to the burial site of Joseph. It's of course in the Palestinian area, but Israel maintains it, and the Palestinians have guards all around. The three of us came, the Canadian girl and me and our guide. And as we came, Palestinians kind of emerged out from, I don't know where they came from. They had guns, but fortunately, of course, our guide spoke Arabic. And so he explained who we were. Now, we were not allowed to go inside, but we were able to see the tomb. And we read, they buried the bones of Joseph, which the sons of Israel brought up from Egypt at Shechem, in the piece of ground which Jacob had bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money. So this is where Jacob was buried and is buried today. Jacob's well was there, and this is another thing we went to. A Greek Orthodox church has been built up over the well. So we went to the Greek Orthodox church, and we went into the church, and there was a priest who was kind of protecting it all. And, it was an amazing church. And then he showed us where to go. We had to go down sort of into a basement area to the well. Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, being wearied from his journey, was sitting thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. And so this, they believe it was Jacob's well, and it's being preserved by this Greek Orthodox church. And there came a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. So that's the story. For his disciples had gone away into the city. The city would have been Shechem to buy food, and he was there by the well. And this particular painting was where the Samaritan elder was talking to us on Mount Gerizim. But I show you that picture because it tells the story. Now, Paul's ministry is to the Gentiles. So Yeshua, his ministry was not to the Gentiles, although he took time to take care of Gentiles if they needed help. Paul was the one who said there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free, neither male nor female, for all are all one in Christ Jesus. So his ministry was to the Gentiles. Yeshua's was not to the Gentiles, although he was open to working with Gentiles if they had help, needed help, and he had compassion on them. But Paul was the one who really ministered out to the Gentiles, and that became the Church of Christianity. So with that, I hope you had fun with my little visit, and I will see you in another visit. With that, I wish you shalom.